The crowd had gathered, buzzing with excitement as they spoke of the miraculous things Kotarou had accomplished. One person recalled witnessing him bring both Hyrie and Miria back to their senses. Another exclaimed about how he had obliterated the meteor, while someone else spoke of how he had instantly killed the goblins. Their voices were filled with awe, and many praised him enthusiastically, declaring him amazing. Cries of gratitude echoed all around. Thanks, praises, and declarations of a new hero filled the air as the people surrounded Kotarou in admiration. Standing in the middle of the crowd, Kotarou blushed slightly, clearly embarrassed by the overwhelming praise. Hyrie stood nearby, smiling warmly as she watched him. Emile felt relief that the ordeal was finally over, while Miria stood off to the side, quiet and observant. Meili, ever the timid observer, peeked around a corner to watch the scene unfold. Within the sea of people, Kotarou caught a fleeting glimpse of Servain before he vanished once more into the crowd. As Kotarou observed everyone, a single word echoed in his thoughts: gratitude. Suddenly, the child from earlier rushed forward and embraced Kotarou tightly, expressing heartfelt thanks for saving their father. Kotarou's gaze lifted, and he spotted the man in the crowd, smiling back at them. At that moment, a gentle smile formed on Kotarou's face as he reflected inwardly on the strange, unfamiliar emotion rising within him. He never imagined that someone like him would come to feel the desire to protect others. And it was all thanks to Hyrie. Because of her, he now had someone he wanted to fight for. Unseen by the crowd, a small dragon watched the entire scene unfold from a distance. Its voice, quiet and knowing, mused to itself about the boy. Fuuma Kotarou, what an interesting child. Not only had he mastered magic, but he was also the one the observer had chosen. The dragon found him wonderful and began to wonder who among them would be the one to kill the demon lord Jura. Because Fuuma Kotarou had saved the 4 heroes, the balance of power in the world had shifted. The demon kin, enraged and threatened, began to truly trample across the world. With 5 of the 10 demons now lost, the demon lord saw Kotarou as a rising threat, no longer aiming to capture him, but instead focusing entirely on eliminating him. Six months later, a lone girl wandered across a desolate wasteland. She took in the sight around her and noted that this place, too, had been destroyed. Suddenly, a creature appeared behind her, a grotesque fusion of orc and lizard man. It commented on finding survivors and voiced its ravenous desire to consume more in order to grow stronger. But it was given no chance. In the next instant, it was obliterated by a single strike. As the dust settled, the girl landed gracefully and clutched her sword tightly, hugging it to her chest. This was Jon Dark, a reincarnator. The sword in her possession was the legendary SSS rank equipment, Necromance, a magic weapon that evolved by consuming blood. The demon, now reduced to mangled pieces on the ground, struggled to comprehend what had happened. It insisted that it was a high-ranking member of the demon kin, a new creation born from crossbreeding, part of the next generation of the 10 demons. As realization struck, the demon took note of the red-haired figure before it. Panic overtook its thoughts as it recognized her, questioning if she was the very same person rumored to have destroyed the Western continent once ruled by the 10 demons. But before the demon could finish its words, Jon crushed its head underfoot. Standing firmly, Jon reflected on the state of the world. Even on this continent, she could still hear too many voices filled with sorrow. She questioned inwardly if God was once again commanding her to take up arms and fight. Overhead, a hawk circled the scene, and from somewhere unseen, a mysterious voice spoke, observing her. The voice admired Jon, considering her to be as remarkable as Fuuma Kotarou, and expressed eager anticipation for her growth. Reincarnators, those blessed by the one who sees the world, were individuals who wielded transcendent power. These beings were feared, despised, used, and revered in equal measure. Though they bore overwhelming power, They were still incomplete souls burdened by powerful regrets and unfulfilled desires. But when these souls grew and learned to master the unique powers of this world, they could become beings capable of rivaling the gods. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared in the sky above Jon. As she looked up, the circle ignited with radiant energy, and dragons emerged from within. Among them was Igny, number 3 of the 10 demons. He descended and confronted Jon, asking if she was the human responsible for wiping out the lower ranks of the 10 demons. Jon offered no reply, only a blank stare. Igny seemed intrigued by her quiet confidence, remarking on her beauty and the fact that she knew her place. He claimed to have conquered countless dragons to attain his strength and declared her worthy of being his plaything. Without warning, he launched an attack, commanding her to disappear. Jon tightened her grip on her sword and readied herself. As energy gathered in Igny's hands and in the mouths of his dragons, he unleashed his assault, Belial Harrow, Hellfire Blast God spell. Jon invoked her own technique, Eero, Divine Oracle Sword Deer. Her blade tore through the dragons, completely nullifying Igny's attack. Igny laughed even as his body began to split apart, calling it cheating to have granted an SSS rank weapon to a reincarnator. Jon stood victorious, declaring that as a child of God, she would cut down all evil. Igny, defeated but not yet finished, muttered about reincarnators, swearing vengeance. With a final act of desperation, he attempted to drag Jon into death with him by casting Zarim. Instant death curse. The deadly spell surged toward her, but suddenly, someone appeared and shielded Jon from the deadly attack. Igny's thoughts raced in disbelief as he realized his spell had been deflected. He questioned whether it was the Arcanan, super light magic wall spell, though he noted he had never seen one shaped like this before. The instant death cursed eye was a lethal technique passed down among the demon dragonkin, and even a super light magic wall spell shouldn't have been able to block it. Jon, stunned, stared wide-eyed at the figure who had saved her. In an instant, the figure vanished, then reappeared right before Igny. Without a word, he glared at the demon and unleashed an attack of his own Zarim. Ninjutsu instant death cursed eye. Igny panicked. There was no doubt in his mind now. This was Fuuma Kotarou. The power he had just witnessed was on an entirely different level from the instant death cursed eye he knew. Before he could finish his thoughts, the attack consumed him and he was destroyed. Kotarou stood firm and declared his intent to free the world from domination. Jon's attention was immediately drawn to those words. Then Kotarou noted aloud that only 2 of the 10 demons remained. After defeating Igny, Kotarou slowly deactivated the magic shield. Jon, stunned, looked at him and tried to process what had just happened. She questioned whether he had truly saved her and observed him closely, sensing there was more to him than met the eye. It was clear to her that he wasn't just an ordinary person, and yet something about him puzzled her. She hesitantly asked how he planned to free the world from domination. Kotarou met her gaze and answered with calm resolve, explaining that his goal was simple: eliminate those who ruled so that all living beings could be free, himself included. Jon stood in silence, contemplating his words. Thoughts of her own past surfaced, memories that reminded her of her divine mission, the one she had believed in since childhood as a child of God. The concept of freedom felt distant and dreamlike to her, yet deeply alluring. Kotarou looked at her knowingly. He recognized something in her eyes, a reflection of the path between life and death she had walked countless times. He identified her as a reincarnator, just like him, perhaps even more experienced. Jon was confused. She had always believed that she was summoned to this world to bring judgment, to carry out the will of a higher power as a child of God. She struggled to understand if he was implying that he was the same as her. Kotarou admitted he didn't fully understand it himself, but affirmed that it was something like that. He had met several reincarnators before, and each one had exceeded the limits of human capability. They were all monsters, transcending time and place, drawn into this world by an unseen will. He pondered if perhaps even the demon lord had been brought here the same way. The idea lingered in his mind that they might all be under the jurisdiction of a greater existence. Jon's thoughts aligned with his, and she asked if he was suggesting that this existence might be God. Kotarou considered the idea. If that were the case, then whether it was a god or a Buddha, he couldn't forgive any being that ruled over others. The scene then shifted to the ends of the world, where a figure stood alone among the rubble. Another figure suddenly appeared before him, brimming with energy and excitement. It was one of the demon's elite, number 1, known as Slime. With an eager tone, Slime declared that he had been searching for the figure and had something urgent to ask. But the figure, unbothered and distant, told him to move aside, stating he had no interest in any of it anymore. That figure was none other than the first reincarnator, Fuuma Kotarou. The slime creature let out a maniacal laugh, amused by Kotarou's indifference. He playfully lamented the lack of interest in him, bragging that he was the strongest of the 10 demons. Then, with a twisted enthusiasm, he mentioned knowing someone even stronger and urged Kotarou to fight that person instead. Kotarou's glare hardened, cutting through the slime's antics like a blade. The creature faltered under his gaze. Kotarou's tone dripped with contempt as he questioned whether the slime actually thought he had the authority to command someone like him. His words struck deep, and the slime immediately apologized, his voice trembling with fear. But after a moment's pause, the slime's expression shifted. He scoffed, then laughed again, his confidence surging as he tried to reassert dominance. He praised Kotarou's killing intent but proudly declared himself the top dog of the 10 demons, the strongest among all demon kin. Without hesitation, he began casting a powerful spell, calling upon the strongest spells of the 4 attributes, fusing them into a devastating combination. The slime gathered a tremendous surge of energy, focusing it into a devastating technique, his ultimate spell. As the power intensified, he unleashed the Grand Magic Ray Explosion spell, sending a blinding wave of destruction directly at Kotarou. The spell connected, detonating in a massive explosion that shook the battlefield and engulfed everything in its radius. As the energy dissipated, the slime began to laugh, fully convinced of his victory. In his mind, there was no way anyone could have survived the impact. He celebrated loudly, declaring that he had done it, that he had blown Kotarou away. But his triumph was short-lived. Before he could finish gloating, his body was split cleanly in 2. Kotarou had reappeared without a scratch. Without hesitation, he waved his finger again, slicing the slime into countless more pieces. Calmly and coldly, Kotarou listed off the elemental arts: fire release, water release, wind release, lightning release, acknowledging his mastery over all of them. To him, magic was dull and predictable. It could never reach the realm that ninja had achieved. He regarded it with disdain, calling it trash. The flames produced by such magic weren't hot or cold. They couldn't even numb the skin. The slime, now enraged, shouted out in fury. In a desperate move, he activated his unique ability, infinite multiplication, and began duplicating himself over and over. The battlefield filled with his clones as he challenged Kotarou to kill him now. With this many bodies, they would chant the ultimate spell all at once, overwhelming him through sheer numbers. Suddenly, Slime and all of his countless duplicates were torn apart in a single instant by Kotarou's devastating technique. The attack he unleashed was ninjutsu, Kazaguruma Wind Demon Frenzy, a whirlwind of precise, lethal force that left no trace of his enemies behind. Kotarou stood amidst the fading remnants, unchallenged. His voice rang out, calm yet heavy with disappointment. Everything so far had been too weak, far too weak. He questioned whether there existed anyone in this world capable of stirring his blood, of making his flesh truly come alive in battle. He was the first Fuuma Kotarou, the originator of all Fuuma ninjutsu, the founder of the Fuuma, Every ninjutsu that came after was nothing more than an imitation. He alone was the one who had created the true source of ninjutsu. With the supernatural power he had mastered, he had the strength to destroy anyone on the battlefield. Those who inherited his name afterward were feared across the world as immortal beings. Suddenly, two figures appeared behind Kotarou. One of them spoke, impressed by what he had seen. Kotarou turned to look and saw them clearly. It was Demon Lord Jura, accompanied by one of the 10 demons. Number 2, Zenova. Kotarou identified them immediately as demon godkin, mere imitation gods. The scene shifted back to Kotarou and Jon. Kotarou was still reflecting on the immense magical power from earlier. Jon stood silently. The presence Kotarou had felt carried an unbelievable level of killing intent, something that lingered deeply in his mind. He wondered to himself, just who could it have been? Kotarou activated a magic circle and turned to Jon, asking if she would come with him after sensing the presence of demon kin. Jon stared at him blankly, her thoughts drifting back to something he had said earlier, how he would never forgive those who ruled over others, whether they were gods or Buddhas. She quietly echoed the idea of a world without domination. As a child of God, she had always lived according to divine will, even in this world. The thought of freedom felt like a dream to her, so distant and unreal. With resolve, Jon told Kotarou that she couldn't go with him. She warned that the next time they met, they might even be enemies. Kotarou acknowledged her decision without resistance. She then expressed her gratitude for being saved and promised to repay her debt to him. Kotarou smiled and accepted her words, saying goodbye until they would meet again. With that, he activated a ninjutsu teleportation spell, and his body burst into energy, shooting off into the distance. As Jon stood watching him disappear, the word freedom lingered in her mind. Kotarou soon arrived at the site of an ongoing battle. A clash was unfolding before him. The original Fuuma Kotarou was locked in combat with Zenova. Zenova gathered energy and unleashed a technique, magic light chain swords, firing a torrent of energy toward his opponent. In response, Kotarou used his ninjutsu Kazaguruma, Wind Demon Frenzy, easily dispersing the attack. Watching the original Kotarou's technique, Kotarou was surprised. He recognized the art, it was ninjutsu. His attention was drawn by a voice filled with twisted delight. Demon King Jura observed the original Fuuma Kotarou's power and the darkness within him, sensing unbelievable anger and hatred. Jura declared that such emotions were befitting of a demon kin and vowed to make the original Kotarou his. Suddenly, Zenova appeared behind the original Kotarou, but before he could strike, Kotarou dashed forward and unleashed a technique. Shigeru, ninjutsu, finger sever, slicing Zenova apart in a clean blow. With Zenova down, Kotarou turned his attention to Jura, declaring that he was the only one left. Enraged, Jura lashed out, furious over what had been done to his pawns. He admitted he had been scheming to bring Kotarou over to the side of the demon kin, but with that possibility gone, he vowed to kill him then and there. He called out to him by name, Fifth Fuuma Kotarou. Hearing that, the original Fuuma Kotarou was taken aback. The name, the technique just used, it all clicked in his mind. A grin slowly spread across his face as he recognized the ninjutsu and understood exactly who the newcomer was. Kotarou stepped forward, and 4 magic orbs of different colors formed around him. Drawing them together, he unleashed a powerful attack. Grand Magic Light Explosion Spell. The spell struck Jura directly, erupting into a massive explosion of magical energy. But when the dust settled, Jura stood completely unharmed. Unfazed, Jura acknowledged Kotarou's mastery of magic with mild interest. Kotarou calmly noted that he was glad to have confirmed something, that magic truly had no effect on godkin. Jura responded with a low grunt, unimpressed. From behind the 5th Kotarou, the 1st Kotarou observed the scene. a grin of satisfaction spreading across his face. Without hesitation, Kotarou initiated a technique, Chigai, ninjutsu blood shell. Slashing his own throat, he allowed the blood to pour freely over his body. The blood clung to him, hardening into a crimson armor. It was an advanced ninja technique, blood, solidified and worn as a shell of protection. With his new armor complete, Kotarou declared his intent. If Jura was serious, then so was he. He would crush him with pure ninjutsu. He didn't hold back his words, calling Jura a half-assed failure of a demon lord. The insult struck deep. Jura's face twisted with anger. The words echoed through him, stirring up buried memories. A voice from his past resurfaced. A cold, dismissive tone that once told him there was no place for a failure like him. But it hadn't ended there. The voice had offered a condition. If he achieved results, he might be welcomed back. That promise had become his drive. In the present, Jura shouted his vow. He would gather the strongest demon kin and one day be acknowledged as a true god. He believed it without doubt. He was the true ruler. Turning his focus to the first Fuuma Kotarou, Jura activated a technique, Divine Technique Curse Ring. He attempted to force Kotarou into submission, demanding he become his subordinate and kill for him. He would amplify Kotarou's negative emotions and guide him into the arms of the demon kin. But Kotarou remained composed. With a flick of his finger, the contract seal on his neck dissolved into nothing. Jura stared in complete shock. His expression twisted further as veins bulged from his face, consumed by rage. Kotarou, still calm, questioned whether Jura truly thought such a technique would work on a ninja. That only provoked Jura more. Enraged, he accused Kotarou of looking down on him and began to transform. Two massive hands erupted from the ground. As Jura rose, his voice boomed with divine fury. Now a towering giant, he asked if Kotarou truly believed he could stand against a god. Power began to surge within him, energy gathering at his mouth. With a roar, he released the attack, unleashing a massive blast that tore through the surrounding area, obliterating everything in its path. Far in the distance, Servain watched silently, observing the battle unfold from afar. After Demon King Jura's attack faded, Kotarou was seen casually walking forward, completely unaffected by the destructive force. He remained calm, protected by the hardened layer around his body. As he moved, he glanced to the side and noticed the first Fuuma Kotarou also clad in the same blood-red armor. The sight caught him off guard for a moment. The blood shell was a secret Fuuma technique, and seeing another with it triggered a flicker of realization. Jura, witnessing Kotarou unharmed, expressed his frustration. His voice trembled with fury as he demanded everything to break apart, unleashing sharp spikes that erupted violently from the ground. As the spikes launched upward, Kotarou deftly evaded them. He acknowledged that anything Jura touched was supposed to break, and dealing with it was becoming a nuisance. Deciding it was time to end things, he prepared for a swift finish. Another attack from Jura came flying toward him. The attack struck Kotarou, but his body began to fade away. It was nothing more than an afterimage. In that instant, Kotarou reappeared, having used the ninjutsu technique Himizu. Without pause, he followed up with another technique, Raikou, propelling himself forward at lightning speed. In a flash, Kotarou was positioned above Jura. Staring up, Jura struggled to comprehend what was happening. He questioned why someone with the power of a god could be so thoroughly overwhelmed. Confusion and disbelief poured out of him as he demanded to know what Kotarou truly was. Kotarou answered calmly, affirming that Jura already knew the truth. He was Fuuma Kotarou, a human. Jura lashed out again, refusing to accept the reality. He denounced them both as mere toys of the gods, insignificant in the grand scheme, and launched another furious attack. But before it could reach him, Kotarou unleashed a powerful counter. Drawing from the Fuuma's 12 forbidden arts, he used Fuumaden. The technique surged forward, striking Jura directly and blasting a massive hole into the ground beneath him. Kotarou unleashed one of the Fuuma clan's most dangerous techniques, Fuumaden, one of the 12 forbidden arts, Fuuma bullet. This powerful wind-release ninjutsu fired off compressed vacuum pressure with devastating force, creating a massive hole beneath him. He fell into the darkness of the abyss his own technique had carved, descending deeper and deeper into the unknown. As he plummeted, a familiar presence emerged from the shadows. Jura, furious and filled with rage, appeared in the dark. Unable to contain his anger at being made a fool of, Jura gave chase, determined to kill Kotarou in that very moment. Kotarou continued to fall until he passed through an opening that revealed a vast, hidden world beneath the earth. As the scenery opened before him, he realized what lay below. It was another world, one entirely separate from the surface. Above him, Jura was still in pursuit, and both of them soared through the air before crash landing atop an enormous skeleton. Dust filled the air as they landed, and Kotarou turned to face his relentless pursuer. He found Jura emerging through the settling haze. As the dust began to settle, Jura remained silent. From within the fading haze, his body started to change. Horns slowly pushed out from his head, and his massive frame began to shrink. The transformation continued until his form was fully revealed. He was no longer the towering figure he once was. Now, he had become a smaller, gray-skinned creature with one glaring eye in the center of his face and sharp horns protruding from his head. Jura spoke a single word: "Kneel." The command echoed with unnatural weight, and in the next moment, a strange force surged through Kotarou's body. Without understanding why, his knees buckled, and he dropped to the ground. A wave of confusion washed over him as he tried to resist, stunned by the sudden loss of control. Jura spoke again, his voice filled with cruel satisfaction as he explained the truth. This was the power of a god. Every word he uttered became reality. It was the unique skill of the godkin verbal reality. Through it, Jura could reshape the world with nothing but his voice. He relished in his dominance, declaring that Kotarou's life was in his hands, that he could kill him at any moment. But even as he boasted, blood dripped from his mouth. The divine technique was taking a heavy toll on his own body. Kotarou said nothing, quietly analyzing him. Then Jura gave another command. He spoke the words "be near death," followed by "be consumed by poison," and finally "writhe in agony." Each declaration struck like a curse. Kotarou's body responded violently. Blood gushed from his mouth, his eyes widened, and he collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by the unbearable pain. Jura cackled darkly, announcing that he would finish it with one more command. But he also admitted his limit. His body could only withstand one more use of the ability before breaking apart completely. Despite the agony, Kotarou managed to speak. He called Jura a failure. The insult landed hard, and Jura, teeth clenched in fury, began to shout his final command: "Die, Fuuma Kota." But before he could finish, Kotarou activated the very same divine ability and cut him off with a single command: "Shut up." Jura's mouth snapped shut instantly, silenced by his own technique turned against him. Kotarou wasted no time. Kotarou tore Jura apart using the ninjutsu technique Shigurui, Death Frenzy. The attack overwhelmed Jura instantly, ending the battle with ease. Shigurui, Death Frenzy, was an advanced ninja technique that caused the user's body to release an excessive amount of adrenaline, temporarily multiplying their physical capabilities many times over. As the shattered pieces of Jura's body floated in the air, his thoughts lingered on Kotarou. He struggled to comprehend what had just happened, recognizing that Kotarou had momentarily used a divine technique. Realization struck him. So that was the reason Kotarou had been able to master magic in such a short amount of time. Fuuma Kotarou's unique skill was the ability to copy. That single truth echoed in his mind with bitter clarity as his life finally slipped away. Kotarou stood in silence after finishing Jura. From a distance, the first Fuuma Kotarou and Servain had been watching the entire encounter. Servain, upon seeing Kotarou emerge victorious, smiled. The first Fuuma Kotarou, observing the outcome, acknowledged the one who had inherited his name. He found the fifth Fuuma Kotarou interesting. Kotarou looked up toward the sky, his expression distant and solemn. He reflected on the world above, wondering if it had finally become a place where Hyrie could live with a smile on her face. As he stood there, Servain appeared behind him, his voice calm but heavy. He told Kotarou that it was all meaningless, that conflict only bred hatred, and that the cycle never ended. Killing, he said, didn't solve anything. Kotarou turned to him and questioned whether Servain was perhaps misunderstanding something. He acknowledged that he already knew all of this. In his world, it had been the same. Every world, no matter how different, was bound by endless conflict. But Kotarou wasn't trying to save the world. He simply hated those who ruled over others. At that, the first Fuuma Kotarou burst into laughter. He praised the fifth, saying he liked him even more now. That was how a ninja ought to be, battle-crazed, good for nothing but killing. When he encountered a strong opponent, his body ached for battle, and he couldn't help himself. Kotarou turned to face him, repeating the word ninja under his breath. In a flash, the first appeared directly in front of him, moving with blinding speed. He acknowledged Kotarou as a strong opponent and expressed his satisfaction that the one who had inherited his name lived up to it. Kotarou's thoughts raced as he considered the possibility. Was this man truly the original Fuuma Kotarou? The first continued, explaining that his desire for battle had never been satisfied. Not in Japan and not even in this other world. He had killed kings and warriors alike, but they were all unworthy trash. The loneliness of never having an equal tormented him. No matter how much he killed, it was never enough. Eventually, he realized the only one who could truly fight and kill him as an equal was himself. He had long wished for another version of himself, so they could kill each other to their heart's content. And now that fantasy had become real. Kotarou considered turning away, thinking he had no obligation to fight this man. But with so much killing intent radiating from the first, he knew he couldn't remain silent. The challenge was issued, and Kotarou accepted. As the two glared at one another, a blue shroud of energy enveloped them both. They were lifted into the air as a voice echoed out, summoning the chosen heroes who had defeated the demon lord to gather. Kotarou immediately recognized the voice. It was the same one he had heard during that moment of death, when a mysterious hand had reached out to him. Both Kotarou and the first were pulled away, rising into the sky. Servain flew after them, confused and alarmed by what was happening. He shouted at them, demanding an explanation. Kotarou called out to Servain, shouting that he had known he was there all along and that he had been watching over his movements the entire time. As he said it, he added a quick thanks. Servain blushed at the accusation, flustered, and tried to brush it off, claiming he wasn't particularly interested in him. Kotarou then asked him for a favor, to pass on a message to Hyrie. He wanted her to know that he would definitely return alive. Servain paused, momentarily frozen by the request. Then, with a quiet seriousness, he nodded and agreed. As Kotarou and the first vanished, Servain watched them go, the sky now quiet once again.